Hi, everyone. We're just going to give another minute for people to file in. We've got some folks that are logging in now. So I'll give it till 1 minute and then we'll get started. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Colleen Gustitis, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Cofense. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for our Cybersecurity Awareness Month webinar entitled Turn Your Greatest Vulnerability into Your Best Line of Defense. Cybersecurity Awareness Month, now in its 20th year, is an annual collaboration between government and private industry to raise awareness about digital security and empower everyone to protect their personal data from digital forms of crime. While many organizations throw more technology at the problem, trying to remove the human element from the equation, at Cofense, we argue that technology alone will never be enough, and your employees are actually one of the most important lines of defense, playing a critical role in defending against cybersecurity attacks. Joining me today, also from Cofense, is Rachel Roldan. She is our VP of Product, and Josh Bartolome, VP of Global Threat Services. Welcome, Rachel and Josh. Thank you for giving us your time and expertise today. A couple of housekeeping topics before we get started. On the agenda here, we'll give an overview of the state of email security and phishing, including the top emerging threats we've seen, followed by the best practices of an effective phishing program. We'll then open up the floor to audience questions. Please know that you can also ask questions at any time throughout the session using the Q&A window in your console. This webcast is being recorded, and everyone here today will receive a link to the recorded session once the webcast has concluded. On the right side of your console, you'll also find links to some helpful email security-related resources. Now that that's all out of the way, we'll go ahead and jump in. Email still remains the #1 vector even today. The FBI reported phishing as the #1 cybercrime in 2022, as well as it being responsible for 90% of data breaches in that same year. IC3 also identified business email compromise had resulted in almost $3 billion of losses in 2022. And Gartner, their latest research indicates that 90% of organizations have security awareness training programs, yet 60% of their employees admit to intentionally bypassing company guidance. That's a challenge for everyone here on this call today. 60% of cybersecurity teams spend less than 5% on their budgets on all awareness activities. So we know resources are constrained. And even though cybersecurity awareness training has been around for a very, very long time, 82% of all breaches involved still reflect a human element in 2022. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our experts to walk you through the content of this webinar in hopes of giving you some things you can use on Monday morning in the form of best practices. Rachel, I believe you're up.
Great, thanks, Colleen. Let's dive right in and talk about what Cofense has recently seen in the threat landscape. Earlier this year, we started seeing a large amount of QR code phishing campaigns, and specifically looking to gain credentials from Microsoft users. And this was across multiple different industries. It really wasn't just targeting one specific industry versus another. And QR codes haven't historically been popular due to the way that users interact with them. But attackers are exploring this delivery method, which makes it much easier to actually reach the inbox. And this is because the phishing link is hiding inside of the QR image, which provides threat actors with a different tactic to bypass traditional file and text detection software. And because QR codes require scanning a mobile device, this puts the user outside of the protection of the organization. Now, it is possible to open a QR code on a computer, but most of the time they are being accessed via a mobile device or a tablet. And if that user is in fact using a personal device, they're likely going to lack any sort of protection from the network or endpoint solutions that their organization has in place. And once that attack takes place outside of that protection realm of your company, it's much more difficult to identify and remediate the attack. And reality is, threat actors will always look for new tactics and ways to get in. We have seen a rise in QR code usage, both at work and at home life. So for example, going to a restaurant, pulling out your phone and accessing that restaurant menu via QR code, to even being able to authenticate into an application at work. So while QR codes do have a legitimate reason for use, that's also why attackers have started using them and exploring that vector. We mentioned hiding the phishing links inside the QR codes, but they also can be in the form of an embedded image, whether it's in an image attachment or a PDF file. And while some automations can be put in place, such as QR scanners that can be helpful, it's not always guaranteed that the QR code phishing is going to be picked up, especially if it is in a PNG or PDF file. And we'll show you a few examples of QR codes in just a few minutes. The next one you see there is social engineering. The Cofense intelligence team has recently been tracking a social engineering attack that delivers malware, and it is targeting specifically the hospitality industry. You may have seen resorts like MGM and others in Las Vegas being impacted. The overall goal of the campaign here is to infect the systems and or employees with information stealer malware. And this is a generic malware type that is used to describe certain malware families, but the goal of that remains the same, to steal information. For example, this could be passwords stored in the browser. And the thing about these campaigns is it starts with a reconnaissance email or an instant message, also known as a bait message. And these are non-malicious emails. And the purpose of these is to check to see if the address is even active. And once the attacker receives a response to that bait email, they then will follow up with a phishing email. So why are these getting through? Why aren't these being stopped? This is really all around the attention to detail. The TTPs, which stands for tactics, techniques, and procedures, used here go way beyond the average phishing campaign to target their end users. And they're also using the TTPs that are known to bypass email security, like SEGs.
And that brings us to BECs, which is more of a tailored form of the social engineering phishing attacks that we're seeing. But it's very specific for monetary fraud in one form or another. So with a BEC or business email compromise attack, they're very hard for most security providers to actually detect because it's a text-based email. It's an email that you would normally kind of see. And a lot of it is not, the initial email doesn't actually indicate what the intent is of the person. Oftentimes they're mimicking or spoofing, a person of authority within your organization. It could be your CEO, your finance team, or how have you. Or conversely, it could be spoofing or impersonating a vendor you've worked with, or an employee within your organization that's sending an email to the finance or to the HR or to your benefits team. And again, the goal here is for financial fraud. So oftentimes, a really good example, probably about 6 months ago, I received an email from my CEO saying that he was at a conference and he needed some gift cards to be able to actually give to prospective clients. And if I could, email him back my phone number so that he can text me easier than sending email. Obviously, I knew it wasn't my CEO, but in context of this, just for the quick description, I did text the individual back. Immediately, I can't talk on the phone. Please, can you go to the store and buy me, $500 worth of Google gift cards? Again, still with the guise of he's my CEO. And that is really kind of the base definition of a lot of BEC attacks. They spoof again, somebody of authority within your environment. They try to get you outside of email. So again, that way it's more on your personal device. You're removing yourself from any type of security controls within your organizational environment. And it adds a lens of credibility, or, kind of an angle of credibility for that discussion. So that's mostly grooming you to accept that that is your authority figure, that your CEO, CFO, how have you. And the end goal is, obviously, he wanted me, quote unquote, to buy some gift cards, scratch them off, take pictures, and send it to him, and he'd reimburse me later. And that's a very common BEC tactic. I've seen that across dozens of different customers and organizations that we've talked to, a variety of sizes, industries, and geographies. It's pretty pervasive. The other side of BEC attacks that we've seen too, especially I'm mentioning because we see that around this time of year a lot, is employee impersonation to finance or benefits. And you'll see some examples, and we'll talk about this more throughout this presentation. But it's the finance team or the HR team saying, getting an email from an employee's personal email address, saying, "I need to change my direct deposit." It's not the employee. So we'll talk more about this, but BECs are hard to detect because it's an email. It's a legitimate email. There is no attachments. There are no URLs. It's a standard phishing. They leverage the standard phishing goals, or objectives of, enticement, urgency, and so forth that we're talking about. So as we go through more of this, we'll discuss it more. But BEC over the last 3 or 4 years has been increasing every single year in fraud. I mean, just in the customers I've personally talked to, I shouldn't say customers, but organizations because not all of them are customers, but organizations I've talked to over this last year, easily a couple of $1 million alone that I'm aware of that some of these organizations have suffered in these types of losses. So it is very pervasive and impacting to those entities.
All right, so let's take a look at a few QR code examples. The example on the left is leveraging what looks to be like a request from Microsoft for multi-factor authentication via QR code in order to, quote unquote, keep the account secure. And what attackers are doing here is they're crafting what looks to be a legitimate site. But these sites don't go, they're just not limited to Microsoft. They can be from other file sharing sites such as SharePoint, OneDrive, or even DocuSign, like the example you see on the right. And the goal here is to gain access to credentials or host a file that contains a link to direct you to download the malicious content. And really the purpose is getting your credentials then allows the threat actors to access your organization's data and systems as if they were a legitimate user. And what this does is it makes it way more difficult for your security teams to know when an intruder has accessed your systems. But something to keep in mind here is credential phishing isn't just username and password. It's looking to gain any sensitive information in order to further penetrate your systems. So credit cards, numbers, personal information, and so on. It's not just limited to a username password. Another key indicator here to look out for when you are analyzing an email, and ask yourself, is the method of access a common pattern? So on the example on the right, would you normally access your benefits or employee handbook via QR code? If not, that's a pretty good indicator that that email is malicious. All right, and then here's an example of the campaign being directed towards that hospitality industry we mentioned. And this example follows the same bait and fish pattern we talked about. And there's a couple different TTPs being used here. The initial bait email, we talked about it being not malicious. It doesn't contain any links or any attachments, which is essentially bypassing any sort of checks you have in place for those. And the primary goal is to see if the account is active. So in this particular example, the attention to detail here is pretty spot on, especially for the hospitality industry. You've got a subject of booking, right? Doesn't raise any red flags there. In addition, the details within the message itself appear to be normal to the person receiving this email in the situation. Booking for two people and even providing the dates. So it is very detailed here in the way that these attackers are carrying out these social engineering attacks. And then the goal here, as I mentioned, is to even just get that response. Once they get that response back, then that's when they send the phishing email with the action. And in this particular example, they appear to provide medical records that the hotel needs to accommodate for by clicking on that link. And within the phishing emails, threat actors are actually hosting the malware on trusted domains like Google Drive, Dropbox, and others. The pie chart you see on the screen here outlines the different domains we've seen, with the majority of it being from Google Drive. Another thing to mention here is that malicious URL and domains, they're then all delivering a password protected archive in which not all security infrastructure can do analysis on files with passwords. And even on top of that, in addition, it contains large file size of executables, and a lot of sandboxes or any other analysis tools are pretty limited in the size of files that can be scanned. So it's really leveraging several different TTPs that we see here and the sophistication to be able to specifically target this industry.
So in talking to and about BEC a little bit more, here's some great examples that we've seen that really are indicative of what I was mentioning earlier. The concept of BEC is really KISS. Keep it stupid simple. Don't add too much detail. Don't add a lot of flash, and excuse me, content. Just kind of keep it direct and to the point and try to fly in under the radar. And they leverage, again, kind of the same themes or a lot of the same themes. And it's timely in parts of the year where they know certain individuals or certain groups may be more susceptible to getting a rash of these types of emails. So for example, and this has nothing to do with the conferences that I'm mentioning, but just, it's a coincidental item. Around the time of Black Hat and RSA, BEC, we've seen a trend where the increase in BEC emails coming in from somebody's CEO or, executive saying, I need gift cards, increases because that's logical that they're going to be at those conferences, obviously within the cybersphere. And that's related with the conferences for other industries as well. But from the cybersecurity industry, we see that spike, almost every single year because it coincides with activity that our executives are actually already doing, ergo being at these conferences and not able to talk and asking for the data. Also, you see the email here up on top, updating of account information. That's one that I was mentioning earlier, in that, especially now when we're getting towards an end of the year, most organizations are reviewing and you have to renew your benefits. And if there's any financial changes you want to make, we end up seeing a rash of these types of emails, which, are an external email coming into the organization, spoofing that they're the employee saying, I need to update my direct deposit, or there's instances, I need to change my beneficiaries on my benefits. Same vein, we also see that from vendors coming in saying that, oh, we need to escalate this renewal. Here's a new invoice and a new bank account number, and they're sending that to your finance department. There really is a whole cadre of different types of threats that we see coming across on business email compromise. Now, the hard part is from the detection stance, these are just base text emails. There's really no indication that it is malicious. They're using legitimate email addresses most of the time. And when they're spoofing, so in the example of, I mentioned my CEO emailed me, it was actually his first name dot random middle initial that I just happen to know wasn't his middle initial, dot last name at gmail.com. So he was leveraging a free email service. So when the email came in, for some individuals, that might have looked like it was from our CEO. However, obviously knowing and doing what we do, I knew that it definitely wasn't my CEO. But a lot of people do fall for that, again, every single day. So what we're seeing across the board is a majority of these threat actors that are actually perpetrating BEC attacks and phishing campaigns are leveraging free email services, which you can see by the pie chart on the right side here. So that's your, Outlook.com, Hotmail, Gmail, GMX, things along those lines. Also, we do see a rash often of ISP-based email. So that would be your Spectrum, your Comcast email addresses. And usually what that originates from is the person that email originated from got hacked and their email credentials were compromised. So now these threat actors are actually using their email to, again, look more legitimate because that email has been around for years. It's probably not blocked by any secure email gateway or any security controls. We also do see a run fairly often on mobile email. So that's your iClouds, things that are email addresses and email services that are tied to mobile devices themselves specifically. And don't get me wrong, there is always the spoof. And I'm talking the full spoof where the email is just random characters, but the display name in the email says, your boss's name or your CEO's name. We see that all the time. But by far, we see these a lot with Gmail accounts and, like I said, the Outlooks or the Hotmail.coms. The best thing you can do with these types of emails, and people kind of get a little concerned, like, can I really do that? So for example, if I didn't know that was my CEO, I would have called him on the phone, or I would have messaged him on our internal communication messaging system directly. Say, did you just email me? I just want to confirm. And, I've had individuals, I've kind of, obviously talked to a lot of different organizations, and I've had individuals say, well, I don't really want to reach out to that person. What if they get mad? They're not going to. You're actually trying to protect your organization, and you're verifying that this is legitimate. Would they get mad at you because you potentially just saved them $500 to $1,000? If it was a gift card scam. Same goes with the finance side. We've seen, like I said, invoices coming in that were fake through business email compromise. Communications email comes in, there's traffic back and forth, a couple of emails. Here's a new invoice with a new bank number. Work with your finance team, or if you are on the finance team, have controls in place, or work to have controls in place where if there is actually, example, a deposit or a bank account number change with a vendor or with an employee, contact them verbally, confirm it verbally before you make the change. I've actually talked to a couple of customers where any account change is subject to a 2-week hold before any remittance is paid. And that's their way of verifying that the request is legitimate because they've been burned too many times. So while these things do come in, and it is easy to fall for, and you'd be surprised by the number of times this does happen. As Colleen mentioned when we started, this is almost $3 billion in just 2022. And I think those numbers are probably just what's been reported versus what's the actuals that we see across the board. The best protection is just verification, is just reaching out and confirming. It's really the best way you can do it. So work with your organization, make sure you have policies in place. Same goes with obviously like HR. If I'm going to change my direct deposit, I would truly hope HR would contact me, whether it's through our internal messaging system or, like I said, obviously, just pick up the phone and call me. Just so that way we have that verification, they have that verification, and you are suffering no impact and the organization is not suffering any impact. Because this isn't just about the organization losing money. If your direct deposit, talked with individuals where their direct deposit was changed and they didn't realize it for 2 pay cycles. So now they're out of their pay, for that 1 month period on average, and they have to work now with their HR and their finance team, and the companies did recoup them the cost, but there was a process and it was a couple other weeks for them to kind of work through that. So again, you don't want to have that impact and the companies don't want to have that impact organizationally. So the best you can do is just verify. If anybody gets mad at you verifying it, well, and let me rephrase that. I've never run into any instance where anybody's gotten mad with somebody trying to verify the validity of an email from this behest. But just be aware, these do happen and they look innocuous. We're also seeing a trend here where it's more than just email phishing. We're seeing these types of BEC attacks happening on popular messaging systems, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger even. even for any systems that might be publicly accessible, Discord, things along those lines. So a level of due diligence is needed.
And to add on to what Josh mentioned in terms of verify, that is really where humans are your strongest line of defense here. Technology alone can't solve the problem. We see things make it past SEGs every single day and into users' inbox. And this is why it is so critical to educate and condition your employees to not only be able to spot and identify suspicious emails, but also giving them the ability to easily tell you to report it to your SOC, to your incident response teams, anyone internally that it needs to go to, give them that easy routing method. And that in turn will then shift your employees into that force multiplier. You've heard the messaging, right? That it really only takes one person to click. Well, it also only takes one person to report, right? And that reported message then allows your team to analyze and then take the appropriate actions across your entire organization. And there's a lot that goes into running a successful program, right? And being able to turn your employees into those champions. So let's touch a little bit on some of the best practices of running an effective phishing program. Next slide. Great, so the first one here is clearly communicate your program. And in return, keep it simple. Programs should be clear, and employees should be able to easily articulate the goals, the objectives, and the impacts of you running your phishing defense program. And make it engaging. The more engaged your users are, the more they understand their role and the benefits that they then bring to your organization. And this also is going to show that you are invested in helping to educate them and make sure that they have the information needed, really becoming a partner with them. And celebrate success, right? This is where you can really grow those champions within your organization and recognize ideal reporting behavior and even showcase some of the things that you're seeing internally. If you have something come through and it's malicious and a user reported it, share that information, make them feel like they are part of the process. I guarantee you, if you make them feel like the process, they'll continue doing that ideal behavior. And develop a positive reporting culture. We here at Cofense, we don't recommend running a punitive program. We found that running punitive programs creates a negative impact in many different ways, including fear of retribution, loss of productivity, decreased collaboration, and so on, right? You don't want your users to be afraid to interact with their email. And we found the most effective programs do promote that visibility and collaboration and the ability to speak up and say something without any type of fear of consequence. And I'll also stress the importance of communication, and that is in many different forms in order to connect with your employees. And this goes beyond work, right? It also needs to apply to their home life because phishing doesn't just stop at the workplace. So the more a person can connect and relate on multiple different levels, the more likely they will become one of your champions. And give employees an easy way to report, right? At Cofense, we have our reporter button that sits right in the email client, and someone could easily spot a suspicious email and click that reporter button. Now, that's step one, right? The easy button is step one. There's a step two, and that's that continued communication back. So thank them for reporting. Let them know the outcome of the message they reported. Was it safe? Was it spam? Was it malicious? Make them feel like they're part of the program versus just going through the motions and something they have to do.
If I can add one thing into that, Rachel, just from experience, that last point I think is huge. And one of the questions that came in is related to kind of that concept. So I manage Cofense's Phishing Defense Center, which is our managed email analysis and reporting service. And what I can say without question is the customers that have a strong phishing simulation program and a strong communication program. So when an email gets reported, the employee will get a response saying that email was safe, that email was clean, that email was malicious. I found, and I have the metrics to, kind of verify all of this, the volume of reporting of suspicious or actual malicious emails for those organizations that have those strong programs and communication is bounds above other organizations. They're building and fostering that culture of recognition and communication. And the employees, because they're getting that loop back communication, are feeling like they're actually doing something. They're actually providing value back to the organization. And it really is kind of a good feeling for them versus sending an email out as a report and then it's just going to the void, so to speak, and never knowing, was that useful? Was it helpful? Was it good? Was it bad? So it actually does help educate them too, as to recognize, this was suspicious last time, and this one looks suspicious now. I'm going to report this one because I was told that last time was malicious. So that communication feedback loop that you mentioned is critical.
Absolutely. And on the flip side of that, right, the previous slide covered more about connecting to the employees in your organization. And these next two, we're going to focus more on how to run your program. And the first one there is train regularly and on real threat scenarios. We always say train often. We recommend once per month to everyone, and, at different times of the month with maybe a few additional follow-ups as needed. But really stress the importance of looking at what real threats are hitting your organization and crafting simulations based off those. This is going to make more of a meaningful impact and educate when conditioning your users versus something random and non-relevant, right? Josh mentioned being able to share some of the threats hitting your organization with examples. This helps them as you're then simulating based off of those threats hitting your organization to be able to say, okay, we've seen some of these examples. This looks pretty familiar. Are there the same indicators? Continue to just educate them and feel like they're part of the process. Next is, deliver when users are active within their inbox. So within PhishMe, we have what we call responsive delivery. This feature will only send emails when users are active within the inbox, right? No more just sending out your simulation and not really sure who's where. Are they at their desk? Are they even checking email? This particular feature will then trigger when someone's active and send the message. And this really just gives a greater chance of that user seeing and being able to interact with that message, just giving you extra levels of insight there. And training should be fun and engaging. On the next slide, we'll highlight why this is so important. And always celebrate and promote positive behavior, AKA reporting. And that kind of blends into delivering reporting to all levels within your organization. We talk a lot about positive programs and highlighting positive behavior, but you should also be looking at areas of improvement. Those in your organization who may need a little bit more conditioning and training. And that's perfectly normal, right? It's a great opportunity to work with those individuals and turn them into champions. And then running a program, it also comes with being able to report on the progress and the value. And when you're first starting your program, think about the KPIs that are going to be most meaningful to you and your organization and go ahead and report on those. And this doesn't just happen at the beginning of your program. We always encourage to review those KPIs frequently. It should be an ongoing activity. And that's really just to ensure that as your program is maturing, adjusting your KPIs accordingly. And just overall, this will help communicate your program. So why is content so important? We mentioned the training should be fun and engaging, right? And this is absolutely true. But it also has to be able to connect to the users inside of your organization. Every person is different learning styles, trigger terms, even phishing types. No two individuals or no set of individuals within your organization are going to be the exact same. And this is why it's important to provide a variety of content to choose from. And that includes simulations based off of real scenarios seen in the wild, right? Simulate based off of what your organization is actually seeing. and also ensure that that information is easily accessible after the fact. So whether they've already seen the email or the education piece or even a training, making sure that someone can go back to that and still reference it if needed. Adaptive in nature. The more interactive elements is going to lead to better retention of that information. And this doesn't need to be extensive pieces, right? 20, 30 hour-long trainings doesn't need to be that. It can be quick and to the point trainings. The important part here is the interactive elements. Modern goes beyond just visuals, right? The topics covered in these trainings also need to be up to date and relevant for your organization. And also provide a variety of content, right? We have a ton of different styles, types, languages, topics, and more within our Cofense PhishMe and LMS catalogs to be able to give you that variety, that option, depending on what your organization needs. And last but not least, of course, fun and engaging, right? Exciting visuals and stories help your users digest that information and promotes learning versus more of a punitive action program.
So what happens, right? I mean, we report emails. These emails are coming in. Why isn't security stopping them? Why isn't security processing things faster? I've been in security for well over 25 years, managing SOCs or building SOCs too, and incident response teams. And, what I found in working with my awareness teams and working with obviously my CISOs and others is security teams have it rough. And the reason we wanted to include this is because really it's everybody's problem. What's the context of what we're talking about from the awareness stance? Rachel was mentioning making sure you're doing phishing simulations that are using real phishing attack templates that your organization is seeing or that your industry is seeing. To me, that's huge because now you're actually targeting what your employees are what your employees will identify and recognize the actual threats that are occurring. Because what happens when you're using more generic phishing attack simulations or just kind of off the wall, for lack of a better phrase right now, right? You're going to have your employees start to report a lot of things that aren't phishing attacks to your security team. And then what happens is your security team gets overloaded and they can't actually analyze and look through everything that's getting reported. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's not my problem. That's the security team's problem. Well, it's everybody's problem because it is a part of the organization. And if they aren't able to keep up with the volume of what's being reported and going through all of the different alerts, right, it could actually put your organization at risk of compromise. And also, there's different levels of due diligence and impact. Maybe it was an email that you reported and it ended up being a credential phish, and then your credentials were stolen. And now they have to actually do a remediation and a cleanup of your system, which means now you're out of a system or can't access your account for a day or so. So there is impacts at all levels of this. And really, alert fatigue is real. Not to get too far into the weeds or to, spend a lot of time on this, but one of the first times I actually deployed a button within one of my organizations, I had a fairly decent sized security operations team, deployed the button. In the first hour, we had over 1,000 emails reported. Almost every single person in that security ops team looked at me and started threatening my life because they just couldn't keep up with it. So alert fatigue is absolutely real for your organization, and focusing on real threats, real phishing attacks for your simulations, creating those feedback loops are essential to help your organization. And I won't go through all of this, but the reality is it's a lot of work and there is a lot to go through. And we all want to make sure our organizations are set up because we all like getting our paychecks. So we don't want our organizations to get impacted. And so this is where a lot of organizations need to take a step back and realize there is a lot of different points of technology, but you need to kind of really focus on some crown jewels, right? The thing with phishing attacks is actually the reason I came to Cofense, because I got tired of fighting phishing attacks, is, if you can stop a phishing attack from actually engaging with an employee or actually, executing successfully, you just stopped a compromise from happening. You see a lot of metrics and a lot of statistics online, and here's the cost of an average breach, here's the cost of an average compromise. But what if you just stopped it? In the industry, we call it left of boom. You stop the attack before it happens. And that's why, I did come to Cofens originally years ago, and why I'm strong on kind of these topics. Leverage your segs, test the, advanced security capabilities that they have. Look at actual within your security operations center. Use prioritization or weighting software or methods, algorithms, whatever the term you wish to use, so that you can identify threats that have a higher likelihood of being malicious. At Cofens, we have multiple products. Auto quarantine is actually a function of one of our products, Vision, where we'll actually go in and leverage the Cofens intelligence, which is based on 35 million reporters and information that our security, our phishing defense center and our intelligence team curates, those TTPs and those indicators, to actually pull those emails out of mailboxes before employees actually engage with them. Indicators of compromise, or IOCs, find data that is real time, threat data that is real time, intelligence that is real time, so that you can actually implement it. So that way you're not using intelligence that's even a day old. It's too late. Somebody's already clicked the link. A lot of technologies, ours included, has different types of AI or ML algorithms for threat detecting and heuristics. From a security ops team, one of the best decisions I ever had, or one of the best teams I ever had, was my threat hunting team. So we had our ops teams that actually look at the alerts, but now we have our threat hunting team that are keeping an awareness of what the threat landscape is, and actually just hunting through our email servers looking for, or our systems looking for anomalies that match certain patterns that threat actors are using. And a lot of times security teams don't integrate things together, which is, you buy a lot of this great technology, but the power of it really comes from integrating it together, pulling your intelligence throughout your systems, pulling your alerts into some type of management or weighting platform, or a SOAR or a SIM. It really does make a huge difference. Talking about threat intelligence, this has been kind of my area and for quite a long time. Is there are a lot of different intelligence sources throughout the industries for almost anything that you want to know about, right? The biggest thing when it comes to phishing attacks, because obviously you don't want to impact your email systems, right? I mean, you quarantine that area, you remove or quarantine or block that one email that was supposed to go to the CEO that was about that one M&A activity, right? You just impacted the organization for millions of dollars. So you want to make sure that your intelligence is human vetted. So if somebody's actually got eyes on it and can confirm this is a threat, this is bad. What a lot of people think is phishing attacks are static. It's the same stuff year over year. It's not. Threat actors are changing their tactics, their modes, and their methods all the time. Rachel mentioned about QR codes. That's really a new spin on things. And we've seen variations in the QR code deployments just in the last 2 months. Attackers are always innovating. It's a cat and mouse game. They're always testing against these security appliances and security gates and seeing what gets in. Threat intelligence, speed is essential. A lot of these URLs that are in the QR codes or otherwise have a shelf life of an hour, 2 hours, a couple of hours. A lot of these malware packages, the links to the malware packages only last a day. So if you're getting intelligence a day later, everybody in your organization's already got an email. And they may have already clicked the link and already put their username in, their password in. That's where that real time is. And a lot of the things I've seen with threat intelligence over the years is there's, that real time is lacking, as well as the context and actionability of it. It's great. This is an indicator. I blocked this indicator. What was the indicator for? I have no idea. That doesn't really help with quantify the threats that are impacting your organization. The summary of this kind of concept, why we wanted to include this, is the value of threat intelligence cannot be understated because of the values and the benefits that it actually brings to your security team and to your organization as a whole. It allows your analysts to be more productive by kind of weeding out the noise. It gives you the context so you know what threats are actually targeting your organization specifically. You don't have to worry about false positive. I used to get threat intelligence that I had to then subsequently have a team verify that threat intelligence because I couldn't trust it. So getting high fidelity threat intelligence is key. Integrating that intelligence throughout your organization. We talk about phishing attacks, simulations, and we can remove a phishing email, but you should check your web proxy to see did anybody actually click the link before you remove the email, or before you notified them that email was malicious. And doing all of this quickly is huge, because that is your dwell time. That is the time that an attacker has to actually have actions on intent. That's the time that an email is sitting in mailboxes, waiting for somebody to click on them. So the faster you can actually do your investigations and your cleanup and risk mitigation, the better off your employees and your organizations will be. Lastly, measure. You got to measure. You got to have measures of success, and this is again, kind of a topic that runs everything we've talked about so far today, right? Cybersecurity is not just an IT issue. Everybody should at least be aware of things that we've talked about today. Even if you're not in IT, even if you're not in security, again, something that impacts your organization, and you should at least have an understanding of why it's a concern. We're not just talking this a couple $100 of damages. I mean, you're talking tens to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of potential impact from phishing attacks and phishing remediation. So all parts of your organization should be aware of this. Don't be shy to kind of relay this information out. You can't expect people to care if they don't know what the impacts are or what the risks are. Consistency when it comes to reporting is key. Define your measures of success. Quantify how you calculate your measures of success. Continually report on the measures of success, good and bad. If you have improvements, fantastic. If there's a degradation of your measures of success, what you're measuring for success, you can still report it because now that's an opportunity for improvement. Transparency is a huge factor in this because it establishes trust and consistency with your executives, with your CEO, with your board, and with your employees. Obviously, we're a cybersecurity company. I've been doing cybersecurity for back when I used to have hair. And, we got to make sure that we staff and fund cybersecurity. It is a cost. There is a cost. But, the cost of staffing adequately and having these skills and these functions are often outweighed by the impact if you didn't. And same thing with the cybersecurity functions and teams and services. Measures of success, quantify the KPIs, regularly report, automate. Don't have a human try to do the math every single time. Automate them. That way they're nice and standardized. Define who owns what KPIs for what level of the organization. So that way it's clear and concise communication channels. So everybody knows that this is where it's coming from. This is how it's calculated. And again, report throughout your organization levels. You think some employees, I don't care about this. They're going to say that. But a majority of employees love that level of insight, and it actually gives them a sense of ownership and partnership in the organization and within these processes. As with anything, you have to model behavior, good behavior from the top down. If you have certain processes in place, don't skirt them just because you're at a certain level. Right? Follow the process, put in the tickets, put in the request for documentation for process. Employees resonate with that. And that includes with phishing simulations. Does your CEO get a phish sim? They should, because they're one of the highest targeted employees within your organization. If they don't, and employees know, they're going to be, well, my executive team's not getting phishing simulations. Why do we got to deal with this stuff? Model behavior from the top down has a huge impact.
Great. I just want to finish with this last slide. So we were here talking a lot about security and awareness training and the best practices for a great program. At CoFence, we know that it really involves a lot of different elements, and we really promote not only our expertise in security awareness training, but we truly believe that an end-to-end email security program is what makes people successful. So everything from conditioning your employees to identifying and reporting to automatically removing through technology such as automation, to detecting using human vetted intelligence, and then of course responding and mitigating those threats like Josh just talked about with speed and agility. And so our portfolio really handles that full end-to-end, but we know that the human element, it's 82% of the breaches that we saw in 2022, is a critical factor. And we believe that with the right program, the right training, you can truly make them a force multiplier in that end-to-end security solution offering for your companies. So with that, thank you, Rachel and Josh. Great content related to the topic. We are now kind of in a position where we can go to the Q&A as long as everybody has inputted into the chat session any kind of questions you have. We are only about 10 minutes left in the session, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So if we don't get to your questions, we will follow back up with you all if we don't actually get to any of them. So without hesitation, I want to start with number one. Are the QR emails are QR emails an available template that can be used in a simulation scenario?
I can take that one, and I have some great news. This coming Monday, we are going to be launching QR code templates inside of PhishMe that you can use to simulate throughout your organization. We do currently have a QR awareness newsletter that can be used to send to your organization, and that's more of an educational piece, letting them know that QR codes are very hot in the threat landscape and some indicators of what to look out for. And following up on that, as I mentioned, Monday, by end of day, East Coast time in the US, they are going to be available in your PhishMe account to start using. And we're going to have a handful of different templates to start in various different languages. And in addition to that, there will also be a paired educational piece that you can use, or if you'd like to use your own, that's totally fine. But we are coming out with both the templates on the simulation side and an education piece on Monday.
Rachel, that's great news. I know we're really excited internally about the delivery of those and the launch of those on Monday. So congratulations to the team on that. I'm going to go to question 2. So someone who's attending indicated at my organization, we've reduced our click rates on phishing attempt drill emails, but our reporting rates are lagging. What are some of the tactics messages for encouraging employees to report phishing attempts? We already have 2 buttons for them to click in Outlook.
I'll take that one. That goes back to what I was mentioning before. Make sure you have that feedback loop. If somebody does report something, make sure that at some point you're looping back with them in regards to that was malicious, that was not malicious. No, I say that, one of our products, Triage, which is really an email analysis platform, actually has that reply feature. That's what we leverage within our Phishing Defense Center. And that has been huge with overall fidelity of what's being reported, and again, with engaging with that end user. What I've also done in the past, is for more of a broader awareness campaign, depending on how you do organizational newsletters or all hands kind of conversations. If somebody's reported something, and it actually ended up being a malicious email that you were able to go in and clean up and say it was a significant, there's 100 emails and 100 mailboxes, or it averted a compromise, put that in your newsletter and name that person, right? Because now that's a recognition aspect of it, and people will see that as they read through your newsletter. And that'll kind of groom them a little bit to want to report more, because now they're seeing that it's making an impact. They're seeing that there's recognition. I've seen other organizations do in the past where they kind of set up a little reward system, I guess. So kind of similar to what I just talked about. Somebody reported an email, ended up being, hit 100 mailboxes, how have you, and they were able to avert or rapidly identify, and block the accounts that may have already been compromised. They sent the employee a $50 gift card and put it in their newsletter. So now it's not just a recognition, but there's also that feeling of a reward function with it. Additionally, depending on your, organization and processes and policies, I've seen organizations where they've gone through and, again, kind of in that communication, they'll report their phishing simulations, and they'll also report in their reported email numbers. Again, this goes back to measures of success, quantification, and reporting. So actually reporting in there, here's the number of emails that were reported, here's how many were malicious, here's how many were clean, here's how many were, whatever, and even give the top 5 reporters of malicious emails, list their names. So these 5 people by volume are the top 5 employees within our organization that have reported malicious emails. Way to go, thank you, keep up the great work. A lot of it for that feedback loop comes back to recognition.
Great. Just a general question was about whether you guys would be receiving the recording, and yes, you definitely will. This has been recorded, and everyone who's in attendance will get a link to the recording. Next question. When a user reports an actual phishing email with PhishMe, can the reported email be used for simulated phishing campaigns? Rachel, this is probably you.
Yep, and absolutely, right. Depending on, working with your internal teams, you can kind of take that template and craft your own inside of PhishMe. Otherwise, we're constantly releasing new SegMist templates on things we've seen in the wild available for you in the PhishMe catalog. So more than likely, we have a very similar email already crafted for you to either use or tweak. And if you do find that there is not something available in the PhishMe template catalog that you're really seeing, let us know, right? We always love that feedback coming in and being able to expand upon our catalog.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. With the rise of AI, will ESG solutions be able to catch the AI-generated phishing emails?
So on that one, so there's really two schools of thought with AI. I'll give you my school of thought on this. True threat actors are using real emails that they've harvested from real email accounts. So they're legitimate emails, right? And how can you detect if that's good or bad? Just by base content. It's here's an email with some text in it. Is that good or bad? Is it legitimate, not legitimate? Is it real? Is it not real? I look at AI not so much as a huge wave in can they detect, can they not detect, because all AI is going to do is create emails that have proper grammar potentially, or have a theme that they've inputted, which would be almost identical to real emails being used by threat actors. What I do see, though, is an increase or I see AI causing an increase into what we used to call script kiddies, which are just the attackers of opportunity, where now they can leverage AI to quickly generate some email content to send it out. The reality is, unlike with imagery and things like that, there's really no artifacts in text-based AI output, like you could find with, diffusion rates and things like that in imagery, like JPEGs or, other images that are generated. So I don't see a method overall where ESGs will be able to do AI detection because it's just base text. I do see ESGs going the same route that they have, which isn't a bad route, which is really more pattern detection based on the verbiage used within email bodies. So if there are certain text campaigns that are generated AI or not, that, hey, I need gift cards, right? I can see them flagging those. But again, because it's base text, unless there's a certain AI that has a very specific grammaring pattern or overall language structure that's unique to that AI entity, I don't see the detection of AI specific email content kind of being a thing, unfortunately.
Great. Thank you for your insight, Josh. We have time for just one more. We do realize there's more questions in the chat, and we will follow up directly with you if we have not answered your question. But the last question we are going to take online with the recording is, what are some of the advantages of phishing emails monthly versus quarterly? How do you respond to the comments on phishing simulation fatigue?
I can take that one. So one of the reasons why we recommend at least monthly is the pattern of learning. And I will kind of relate that to maybe learning a new language, right? As you're learning a new language and you're practicing, if you're doing it monthly versus quarterly, you're able to retain that information a little bit more than you would if you spread it out so far. And one of the ways that you can help with simulation fatigue is switching up the content within which you're delivering. So don't use, the same template types, right? We do want you to simulate on real attacks you're seeing, but, maybe pick and choose something different month over month. And that includes the associated education piece, right? That is also going along with that. Give them a different style of learning month over month, and that's going to help with that fatigue setting in. And as I mentioned, monthly is just going to keep that repetition going, in addition to being able to send them additional information via our awareness newsletters. That is not a simulation. It's meant more to be informational, to keep them informed about what's going on within your organization.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, everyone, that really concludes our time for the day. We want to be respectful of your schedules. But thank you to everyone for joining us. And thank you, Rachel and Josh, for sharing such great insights today. For all the attendees, we hope to see you at our next webinar. You can always access the events on our website to find out what's happening. In the meantime, please have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.